All right, let's dive into one of nature's absolute marvels, the orchid. I mean, look at them. They come in this insane variety of shapes and colors. And that really begs the question, how on earth did just one family of plants get so creative? How did they become these evolutionary masterpieces? Well, that's what we're going to figure out.
First off, you just can't deny their beauty. For centuries, we've been totally captivated by them. You could almost call them the supermodels of the plant world. They've got these incredible colors and alluring shapes that are just impossible to ignore.
But here's the thing. All that beauty, it often hides a really clever secret. You see, a lot of orchids are masters of deception. They've evolved to trick pollinators, promising a sweet nectar reward, but they offer nothing, absolutely nothing. It's this high-risk, high-reward game that saves the plant a ton of energy.
And it's this wild combination of beauty and flat-out deception that has led to a literal explosion of diversity. I'm not talking about a few hundred different types here. Orchids are one of the biggest, most successful plant families on the entire planet. It's truly mind-boggling.
Okay, so that brings us to the core puzzle, right? We're about to look inside the evolutionary toolkit that lets orchids be such incredible innovators. We're going to see how they can generate an almost endless variety of forms, just to trick and entice their pollinators.
And just to put that diversity into perspective for you, get this. Botanists have identified more than 28,000 distinct species of orchid. And that number, it's still growing. They're found on pretty much every continent in just about every habitat you can imagine.
So this is it. This is the central mystery we're trying to unravel today. How does evolution actually do that? What's the biological mechanism that can take a basic flower blueprint and then just run wild with it, creating all this variety? It's a question that has puzzled scientists for a very, very long time.
In fact, this whole puzzle is part of a much bigger one, something that really bothered the father of evolution himself, Charles Darwin.
Yeah, Darwin was genuinely baffled by what he was seeing in the fossil record. To him, flowering plants just seemed to pop up out of nowhere and then diversify at this incredible speed. He famously called it his abominable mystery. And orchids? Well, they're one of the most extreme examples of exactly that.
So, let's place orchids on the evolutionary timeline. The first flowering plants, they show up around 140 million years ago. The ancestors of today's orchids, though, they don't emerge until much later, around 84 million years ago. But the real explosion in their variety happened even more recently. Actually, our oldest direct fossil evidence is from just 15 to 20 million years ago. It's an ancient bee, perfectly preserved in amber, carrying orchid pollen. How cool is that? So, to solve Darwin's mystery and really get to the bottom of the orchid success, scientists have zoomed in on one very special, very specific part of the flower.
It turns out, the key to the orchid's evolutionary genius is a single modified petal. It's called the lip or the labellum. This thing acts like a specialized landing pad, a visual billboard, and a guide for pollinators, all rolled into one. It really is the centerpiece of the orchid's entire strategy.
Now, to see why this is such a big deal, just compare it to a typical flower, right? You've usually got a simple, symmetrical ring of petals. The orchid, on the other hand, took its bottommost petal and turned it into something completely different, something much more complex. And that single change, it opened up a whole new world of evolutionary possibilities.
So how does a plant even make a change that radical to its own body plan? Well, the answer is hiding in its genetic toolkit, a powerful set of genes that evolution can play with like Legos.
And these genes are called Mad's box genes. The best way to think of them is like the master architects for building a flower. They're ancient genes, handed down from the very first flowering plants, and their job is to tell all the other genes what to do and where to do it. They don't invent new parts from scratch, they just give old parts brand new instructions.
And this often happens through one of evolution's most powerful tricks, gene duplication. So it starts simple. You have a single gene that just codes for a normal petal. But then, every once in a while, a mistake during cell division creates an extra copy of that gene. Now, since the original is still doing its job just fine, this spare copy is totally free to mutate without causing any problems. And over millions of years, it can pick up a completely new function, like, say, transforming a simple petal into an ornate, spectacular lip.
Okay, so that's a really powerful model for how evolution works. But how do we know it's true? How do scientists actually test it? Well, they've been able to unlock the code by studying a particular model orchid in the lab.
So meet Ericina pacella. This tiny orchid is an absolute dream for researchers because it grows super fast, its genome is small, and you can easily grow it in a lab.
This lets scientists watch its entire life cycle from a tiny seed to a full-grown flower in just a few months.
And using these incredibly powerful tools like scanning electron microscopes, researchers can literally watch the flower develop in real time. They can zoom in and see the exact moment inside a tiny little bud when the lip starts to become different from all the other petals.
And here it is. This is the smoking gun. When scientists measure which genes are being used, they find that certain duplicated MADS-box genes are switched on at crazy high levels, but only in the cells that are destined to become the lip. In the other petals, those genes are basically silent. This is the proof. It shows that these specific genes are the master controllers behind the orchid's greatest innovation.
But wait, the story doesn't stop with the flower. This amazing genetic toolkit isn't just used for attraction, it's also reused for the next stage of the orchid's life, making babies.
So, let's say a pollinator has been successfully tricked and the flower gets fertilized. What happens next? Does this powerful set of genes just switch off and call it a day? No way. Evolution is way too efficient for that.
It turns out the exact same family of MADS-box genes that sculpts the beautiful petals and the complex lip gets repurposed. They're put back to work to control how the orchid's fruit develops. That's the capsule that holds thousands and thousands of tiny seeds. It is the ultimate example of genetic recycling.
And what's even crazier is that this genetic toolkit is tied to the orchid's entire way of life. For instance, orchids that live on the ground, they tend to have fruits that ripen pretty quickly. But orchids that live up on trees, we call those epiphytes, their fruits take much longer to mature. This is almost certainly an adaptation to the completely different challenges of living high up in a forest canopy versus on the forest floor.
So there you have it. The orchid's secret is finally out. It wasn't about inventing something brand new out of thin air. It was all about the clever reuse and tweaking of an ancient genetic toolkit. By duplicating and modifying old genes, evolution has created one of the most diverse and beautiful families of plants on the entire planet. And it really makes you wonder, what other masterpieces is nature building right now, silently in its workshop?